Well, hello everybody. And today I decided I wanted us to discuss something here in regards to the wound break functionality of Monster Hunter Wilds. So, essentially, I feel like there's weapons that benefit from breaking wounds more than others in a multiplayer setting. Obviously, if you're playing solo hunting, this won't matter for the most part, but I do feel that certain weapons are going to have more of a benefit from breaking wounds in a multiplayer hunt. Now, you can take this into account in all of your hunts, or only if you're wanting to, keep good team coordination with your buddies, or whatever it may be. That's up to you, but I just thought it was an interesting point of discussion and wanted to bring it up. So, I'll explain each category as I put something into it, but they are more or less self-explanatory. So, I'm just going to go through the list. First off, Lance. I don't really know, unfortunately, because I didn't get a chance to play it, but from everything I've seen, Lance doesn't really seem to do much outside of be breaking a wound when you use its Focus Strike. But I don't know, and since I don't know, I'm putting it in the not sure category, so I don't give falsified information. Same thing with SNS. I didn't get a chance to play it either, and I know so little about the weapon that I would be talking out my butt to try and suggest anything about it at all. Now then, Hunting Horn is kinda iffy to me, in the sense of, it could go into good follow-ups, or it could just be in the it break wounds category. Now, the reason I say it could be good for follow-ups. So, good for follow-ups essentially means once you have performed the Focus Strike, you can do something following it that benefits the weapon. Now, I'd say that Hunting Horn could go here because as you do the Focus Strike, you get to play 5 notes. And while you're playing those 5 notes, it lets you queue up your songs faster than you could in pretty well any other fashion. With the exception of Echo Bubble, but in Echo Bubble you only get 3 notes. So, to that extent, I'd say it's good for follow-ups because it lets you do something outside of simply breaking the wound. Now, simply breaking the wound goes to Dual Blades, because as best as I can tell, the most benefit you're getting is a chance to recover your stamina and do good damage while you're sliding down the monster's back. That's mostly the vibe I got whenever I use Dual Blades. And then that goes the exact same way for both of the bowguns. They break a wound and they hurt the monster, and that's mostly what I am seeing as their functionality with it. Now then, with Gunlance, Gunlance goes down here. Sorry. Good for follow-ups. Gunlance goes into good for follow-ups to me because after you use Drake Auger, it lets you follow up into a Wyvern's Fire. Well, sorry, the faster Wyvern's Fire. And that's just the strongest attack that the Gunlance has. And so, to be able to go from a wound where you've already probably staggered the monster anyway, and then have time to get your highest damage attack off faster, it just seems like it's a very good flow of the weapon to me. And then same exact thing for Greatsword. It goes into good for follow-ups because after you get a wound break with Greatsword, you can go into the final charge of the True Charge Slash, and that is good for your DPS, obviously, because you can just sit there, and if you have enough wounds, you can sit there and keep breaking them over and over. Now, I'd say that's more fitting in a solo hunt category, but obviously, like I said, we're just talking about what the weapons do, not saying that you have to even care about this at all. Now, Hammer also goes in the good for follow-ups because Hammer is mostly going to stay focused on the head as is because of wanting to get those KOs. And with its Focus Strike specifically, it does so much hits, and especially, like I say, if you're staying on the head, then you're doing even more KO damage to the head by breaking that wound, that you might be able to get a KO and topple the monster over. And then everyone benefits. Now, speaking of benefiting, Bow is our sole proprietor of the big damage category for wounds. Now, what I'm specifically meaning by this is that since Bow has the ability to lock onto multiple wounds at once, I don't know what the highest it can go to. I know it can go a minimum to 3, If it can go more than that, I'm unsure. But as you break multiple wounds in sequence, you get an additional damage per wound popped. So if you pop 3 wounds, the wounds go from like 50 to 100 to 150 on the wounds for each individual wound. Plus the damage that your arrows are doing, plus the damage followed up by Dragon Piercer. So, in theory, say you're hunting a Dashagama. You go and you've been attacking the monster, and as soon as you see it burst all those wounds back open, in its like second phase that it gets where it gets all aggressive, you pull out your bow, you do a focus strike, you pop all those wounds, and it does a lot of damage. That's more or less the way I see that going. And now then, I guess in a way I almost need another category, because Switch Axe is more of the good for upkeep versus need wounds for upkeep. And what I mean by that is when you're in the axe mode of the Switch Axe and you do a wound break, it will fill up your inner gauge that you use while you're in sword mode and you're doing your attacks. Vice versa, if you're in sword mode and you hit a wound, then you can build up the sword gauge into your amp state fast. And so it's very good for those things. However, it's not overly mandatory for the weapon to have that feature. It's just very good that it can, and it makes it all the better when you get to do it. But it's not... You can do those things well enough outside of hitting wounds that I don't feel like it's overly necessary. Now, someone that I do feel like is a little bit more needed than Switch Axe is Charge Blade, in the extent that when you get a wound on Charge Blade, you can go into Savage Axe mode, and you do a pretty decent attack while you're actually performing said switch to Savage Axe mode. And there is another way to get into Savage Axe I'm aware of. It's something to do with when you do a block, and then you can transition... I think there's like a guard point or a block, one of the two, and then you can transition into Savage Axe mode from there. I never successfully pulled it off, but I know it's something that you can do. Now then, Insect Glaive. I feel like Insect Glaive is kind of like the top of the needs wounds for upkeep, because of the fact that we have the new Descending and Rising Slash. So you can go into Descending Slash and then into Rising Slash, and when you go into Rising Slash, it actually consumes all of your extracts that you have gathered by doing the attack. And yes, when you do it, you do gather some back, but the likelihood of you gathering all 3 of them back, unless you're hitting a large monster, like an actual large monster amongst the large category of monsters, like hitting Ray Dow was the most I saw someone ever actually go and manage to get all their extracts back. Because most of the other monsters are too small, or like the positioning is hard to get, things like that. And so, to that effect, I say that it's tricky to just rely on the move itself to get them back. However, if you break a wound with Insect Glaive, you immediately get all 3 extracts at once. And by doing so, you're able to keep up your high DPS and keep your full moveset and all that kind of jazz, and it just seems really good to me. Now, Longsword is kinda iffy on the where in the demand it goes as far as like needing upkeep, because Longsword has so many ways that it can already get itself up to like the red spirit meter, that I don't really feel like it needs to, like, monopolize the wounds in any capacity. But the fact that you can, like, certainly from a solo hunting standpoint, the way that you can go from being fully red into Helmbreaker, into the follow-up, be back down at white, and if there's 2 wounds on the monster, you hit it with the focus strike, and you're immediately back to red, it just lets you keep up such high damage that it's crazy. But at the same time, like I say, you have other means to do it that people who are good at Longsword are, can utilize the other methods, being like the counters, and plus when you're countering, you're getting more damage off, and all that kind of jazz. I'm personally not very good at it, but that's a skill issue, not anything to do with the weapon. And so, this is my more or less completed list. Now, I'm not going to bother saying these are in any sort of ascending or descending order in terms of, like, who has the best follow-ups or who needs it most. This is just how I'm viewing the overall category of everything. And so, I'd be very curious to know other people's thoughts on this. It's just a kind of a thought I had whenever I was playing of, like, certain weapons very much benefit from breaking wounds over the others. And from a multiplayer hunt standpoint specifically. Obviously in solo play this won't matter at all, particularly. Aside from just being like, oh, that's an interesting observation. But like I say, I'd be thrilled to know your thoughts and ideas down in the comments section. I do believe that is all I have to say about this. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Enjoy your hunts.